Today, Amazon completing its second biggest acquisition ever, buying Hollywood's MGM studios. Netflix and Disney, beware. And climate change activists win 2 board seats at Exxon Mobil. This is as an activist investor pushes to overhaul Exxon's strategy. And a state liquor law makes New York City restaurants delay reopening. What's so special about a liquor license and why can't they get one? That and much more coming up at NTD Business. Good evening. Great to have you with us. Amazon is buying one of Hollywood's most famous studios, MGM. The deal gives Amazon a massive library of films and TV shows to compete with streaming rivals like Netflix and Disney+. Zachary Goldman has the details.
Amazon.com is buying the fabled Hollywood studio MGM. The nearly $8.5 billion deal announced Wednesday gives the e-commerce titan a massive film and TV library.
They're really not producing at a level that's competitive with Netflix or even others like an HBO or a Showtime. And so it's not surprising that they do want to get bigger in original content.
It's an arsenal of entertainment Amazon can use to compete against streaming rivals, and its biggest acquisition since it bought Whole Foods for $13.7 billion in 2017. An executive at Amazon Studios said, quote, "The real financial value behind this deal is the treasure trove of intellectual property in the deep catalog that we plan to reimagine and develop together with MGM's talented team." Privately held, MGM, or Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, was founded in 1924. The studio behind classics from Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz, and the James Bond franchise, also owns the Epix cable channel and makes the TV shows Fargo, Vikings, and Shark Tank.
Neil Harmon is the founder of Angel Studios. It's a movie studio that creates family-friendly entertainment. Its Tuttle Twins is the largest crowd-funded children's cartoon in U.S. history. I asked Harmon why Amazon was willing to pay so much for MGM.
It is a hefty price. Amazon paid a lot for it, and Amazon clearly wants to go after the minds and hearts of their customers, and they want their customers viewing content and experiencing media on Amazon's service, and they're willing to pay a price for that. Now, because unlike Netflix that only earns its income off the monthly subscription, Amazon earns additional income off of its retail sales and its AWS web services. Amazon has more to gain by bringing in a customer and having the customer stay than maybe Netflix does, so that they can pay a heftier price for the same thing.
Do you see their business model changing at all with this acquisition?
I haven't seen any signs of it changing away from Prime Video. That's their current strategy. What I can see is that they are spending almost $500 million on the new Lord of the Rings series. They just bought MGM, which has a few favorite films of mine on it, and series. And they're very serious about making a content play inside of Hollywood.
Do you think, was it spurred by this Discovery and Warner Media merger, or this must have been happening well before this announcement? Am I right?
I think right now the traditional studios are all looking for their bearings. And we'll see a lot of these mini majors actually be acquired over the coming years. And simply because distribution models are changing and these older players just don't have distribution built for the new world. And so they're going to need to capitalize on others' distribution with their content libraries. And so I think we'll see a lot of these acquisitions. They're probably in talks right now with multiple players.
We saw the space change a lot, at least grow a lot during the pandemic while people were stuck at home. Where do you think it's going to go? Where do you think it's going to develop to?
Well, the problem is, and when it comes to Amazon, I recently learned that there's been an intimacy coordinator hired for Lord of the Rings, which shocked me. And sometimes it feels like that Middle America and what Hollywood is creating are very apart from each other. And so we believe at Angel Studios that the future is in connecting the creators directly with the audience, and so that the content reflects more what the audience needs and wants, like The Chosen TV series, which has been a global success. And recently, we just started a fundraising campaign for a little series called Wing Feather Saga, which is about the story of a family in a fantasy world sticking together and holding to those good old-fashioned principles. And guess what? This is the fastest fundraise we've ever had from the audience to make this series. People are hungry for a different kind of content, and maybe they don't want $8 billion of more of the content that Hollywood is creating. Maybe they want something a little different. So we see the direct connection between the creators and the audience being important in the future.
Neil Harmon, Angel Studios. And at today's Amazon shareholder meeting, Jeff Bezos announced he'll officially step down as CEO on July 5th. Amazon's cloud computing chief Andy Jassy will take over from there. And climate change activists have successfully gotten 2 members onto Exxon Mobil's board. May force the oil giant to completely change its strategy. NTD's Con Fredrickson has the details.
Activist investor Engine Number 1 successfully won 2 seats on ExxonMobil's board in a historic vote this afternoon. A huge win for the climate change activist and a huge defeat for the oil giant.
Of the Engine 1 candidates, Gregory Goff, Kasha Hatala have been elected.
Engine Number 1 has been giving Exxon headaches since December, trying to push the company towards zero emissions by 2050. Meanwhile, many at Exxon felt this was not in the interest of shareholders.
Political activists masquerading as shareholders stand to gain even more control over Exxon through, guess what, shareholder proposals. These activists hate our business and our country and have no use for us.
Exxon spent at least $35 million, and Engine Number 1 spent $30 million to persuade shareholders, one of the most costly proxy fights ever. Though Engine Number 1 only owns 0.02% of Exxon's shares, they're backed by some of Exxon's biggest shareholders, including BlackRock, the world's largest fund manager. The vote will likely force Exxon to change its fossil fuel strategy. The fate of CEO Darren Woods is also in question. Colin Fredrickson, NTD News.
And pressure on Shell too. A Dutch court wants it to cut its carbon emissions almost in half by 2030. That includes emissions from its own operations and the products it sells. Even though the decision only applies to Holland, it could set a precedent for future rulings.
The court orders Royal Dutch Shell, by means of the corporate policy of the Shell Group, to reduce the CO2 emissions of the Shell Group and of the suppliers and customers of the group by the end of 2030 by a net 45% with respect to the level of 2019.
Environmental group Friends of the Earth filed a lawsuit against the oil giant. They say it's the first time a group has turned to the courts to target a major energy company. Shell, though, will likely appeal the ruling. It says its carbon emissions targets are already in line with the Paris Agreement, but the court says Shell's policy was not concrete, is full of conditions, and that just isn't good enough. And so, out with the oil, in with the wind. The Biden administration says it's moving to advance offshore wind power on the coast of California for the first time. It says it could generate enough green energy for up to 1.6 million homes over the next decade. President Biden wants to deploy 30 gigawatts of offshore wind energy by 2030. That would generate enough energy to power 10 million homes. The administration expects the projects to support about 75,000 jobs, but energy expert Jason Isaac seems to have doubts about the job creation numbers. He says the job estimates are about 4 times higher than the best job creating projects in Texas and are far from permanent. And lockdowns are mostly lifted in New York City, so maybe you're looking forward to a drink, something to eat at your favorite spot. But unfortunately, a state liquor law is making it even harder for some restaurants to reopen. Eateries outside the city can get a temporary license right away, but in the city, you gotta wait. NTD's Evelyn Lee has the details.
Now is the chance for New York eateries to reopen and recover. But New York City restaurant owners now face another challenge, getting a liquor license.
The vast majority of full-service restaurants, if they can't serve you a glass of wine with your pasta or a beer with your burger, then they can't open up and operate.
Reggie says they need a liquor license to be able to open back up. Outside of New York City, throughout the rest of the state, new or revived restaurants have the option of getting a temporary liquor license. It's usually granted within 30 days and is then valid for 90 days. But Big Apple locations are barred from getting a temporary permit and have to go through the regular process.
There's a backlog, and it can take between 4 and 6 months to get a liquor license. So people don't have the money to wait that long to open up to their small business owners.
The Mermaid Inn and East Village seafood restaurant is among the eateries wanting to reopen. But it can't get a liquor permit, which is delaying the process. One of its owners says that booze sales account for 40% of restaurant revenues, which helps keep restaurants alive. And according to Reggie, a temporary license wouldn't just be beneficial to restaurants.
It would allow them to open their doors faster, hire people faster, start generating tax revenue, and fill these vacant storefronts that are really a blight on our neighborhoods.
According to New York Post sources, the more restrictive treatment of New York City is a result of complaints. City residents and lawmakers weren't happy with the rapidly growing number of bars in certain neighborhoods. The Mermaid Inn is now urging lawmakers to change this. It's asking for a law that allows restaurants to obtain the temporary license needed to boost the city's post-pandemic revival. Evelyn Lee, NTD News.
And one McDonald's is so desperate to find new workers, it's even offering free iPhones. And it's not just Mickey D's. Businesses across the country are struggling to find help. NTD's Phil Zoe has the story.
One McDonald's in Illinois is offering free iPhones to new workers. A Twitter photo showing the promotion went viral, getting 250,000 likes. It requires new hires to work at least 6 months, but it's not clear what other requirements there are. A worker from the restaurant in Altamont, Illinois confirmed the offer with NTD News, but declined to comment more. Last month, we reported on another McDonald's offering $50 just for an interview. There's a worker shortage in the fast food industry. Chains like Dunkin' and Subway have had to cut opening hours. Some Taco Bells and Chipotles are also offering cash and pay raises to attract new workers. The government says there are nearly 10 million people actively looking for work. So why are we still short on workers? The New York Times says one reason may be unemployment benefits being too good. Workers are incentivized not to work. Other reasons include CCP virus health concerns and stay-at-home responsibilities such as taking care of kids and the elderly. Phil Zoe, NTD News.
Bank of America expects the worker shortage to continue till early next year. Incredible. And stocks closed higher today, just modest gains though. The Dow rising 11 points, S&P gaining about 8 points, and the Nasdaq adding 81 points, roughly 0.6%. Several companies that rely on consumer spending made solid gains. Dick's Sporting Goods jumped 15%. They reported an increase in first quarter sales today. Urban Outfitters, Abercrombie Fitch also rose on strong results. But healthcare stocks, maybe a sign of the pandemic easing, they lagged today. Bond yields remained relatively steady though. 10-year Treasury yield rose to 1.58%. Gold rose early in the day, slipped later. Oil gained a little today. The governor of Colorado says he's open to letting residents pay their taxes in cryptocurrency. He made the comments at a cryptocurrency and blockchain virtual event. He says, though, they'd need to solve technical hurdles first. He pointed out that he was the first politician to accept campaign donations in cryptocurrency. Don't miss an opportunity. And he says he'd be thrilled for Colorado to be the first state to accept it for taxes. But CoinDesk reports that pilot programs in other states haven't been successful. The Federal Reserve seems to be ready to at least discuss pulling back its monetary support for the economy. One official says they're talking about tapering or reducing the Fed's roughly $120 billion per month asset purchases. It was just a month ago the Fed Chair Jerome Powell said it wasn't time to even contemplate having the conversation, but former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers says inflation has now become the chief risk to the economy, not slow growth or high unemployment, which the Fed's support is supposed to be helping. We'll have new inflation data on Friday. Economists expect the core PCE to have increased by 2.9% year over year. That'd be the largest jump in more than 2 decades. And the Eagle Act is making its way through Congress. It seeks to counter China, make the US more competitive, and push Beijing on human rights. Here's NTD's Patrick Hayden with the details.
The House Foreign Affairs Committee has introduced a new bill to boost economic competitiveness with China and push Beijing on human rights. Representative Gregory Meeks introduced the Ensuring American Global Leadership and Engagement Act, or EAGLE Act, Tuesday. Taking a hard line on China is one of the few truly bipartisan issues in a deeply divided U.S. Congress. Biden administration officials have repeatedly listed competition with Beijing among their greatest strategic challenges. The 470-page bill addresses a range of issues, including increased investment to promote U.S. manufacturing, trade, work with allies and partners, and re-engagement in international organizations. It would also recognize Beijing's treatment of China's Uyghur Muslim minority as genocide. Meeks is looking to pass the bill in his committee by next month. It would then be combined with legislation being considered by other House committees and eventually combined with the Senate bill. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
Still to come this evening, Ikea recalls some of its bowls, plates and mugs. It says you should stop using the products and return them. Find out which ones and why. And roller skating on an airport tarmac? A hotel is doing everything possible to attract customers. You can even take a spin around an airplane. That and more after the short break.
What does it mean to devote your life to the truth? Does it mean investigating communist subversion here in America? Does it mean exposing the deadly fentanyl crisis in the Midwest? Or spending late nights and covering deep government corruption? Does it mean persevering over 20 years? Even after 4 masked men set one of our printing presses on fire last year. Because at a time when America's traditional values are under attack, it's the responsibility of righteous journalists to uphold truth and tradition.
Hey Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry, I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Can birds draw pictures?
I don't have an answer for that.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Ikea is recalling some dinnerware because of a possible burn hazard. The products can become brittle and break when heated, causing food or liquid to leak out. The Consumer Product Safety Commission says about 150,000 of these bowls, plates and mugs were sold in the US, about 11,000 were sold in Canada, at least 123 of them broke, and 4 injuries have been reported. 2 required medical attention. IKEA says customers should stop using the products and return them to the store for a full refund. And one European company is bringing speedy grocery delivery to the United States. Gorillas wants to get your groceries to you in 10 minutes or less. It's kicking off its U.S. delivery service in Brooklyn, New York, plans to expand to Manhattan, and then eventually other U.S. cities. It pulls off its speed by using small warehouses stocked with select items and only charges $1.80 for delivery with no minimum order size. Looking forward to it. And restaurants in California can't wait for the state to fully reopen in 3 weeks. Owners are looking forward to opening at full capacity, and diners have a chance to get back to life as normal again. Here's NTD's Eileen Ang with more.
Restaurants and customers alike are seeing hope as California's full reopening date on June 15th nears. Freddie Rodriguez, assistant general manager at Holder's Mission City Grill, says people are happy to come in because they feel like it's starting to feel normal again.
Just like today, I saw 2 of my regulars that used to come in almost 3 times, 4 times a week, and they just came in for the first time ever since the pandemic started. I was happy. I was like, you guys are actually sitting down inside instead of doing just to-goes. So they were like, yeah. I'm like, this is awesome. I can see new faces and old faces now.
The family-owned American restaurant in Santa Clara has been around for over 50 years. Like many restaurants, they started doing to-goes when the pandemic first started. Rodriguez tells NTD it was tough and they received calls asking if they would be able to survive. But they were confident they would stay open no matter what. With the restrictions easing now, they are doing much better.
Some people are still uncomfortable going inside, which it's okay. We still want people to be careful. So people still eat outside, especially during the weekend when it gets busy inside.
Johnny McGrew, co-owner at Mio Vicino in Santa Clara, said they reopened in June 2020 for outdoor dining. Right now they can seat patrons at 50% capacity inside.
Some customers they're tired. They're tired of the restrictions. They're tired of wearing masks. But most people understand, that we have to keep safe. But most of our customers have been very supportive.
Overall, people are eager to get back to something closer to normal, he said. McGrew added he won't be mandating his guests to wear masks, but the cooks and servers will still have masks on. The lockdown caused the Italian restaurant sales to drop about 75%, and they also relied on to-go. It has been around since 1992.
During the time we were only doing takeout, some people even just came and bought gift certificates and didn't want to take them. They said, you guys can do whatever you want with them. We just want to contribute, to help you guys get through this.
For some customers, it has been a while since they have dined outside.
Feels good to be sitting under the sun. So we have good number of vaccinated cases now. We have been vaccinated as well. So I guess probably in the next 6 months or so, we should be back to normal.
We were always fond of outdoor dining, so this is kind of a win-win situation for us. Good to be back out and enjoy a warm pizza rather than taking it home and eating it up again.
As business is booming again, restaurants face staffing shortages. Owners and managers say people are not applying for those jobs and they cannot find enough employees to keep up with the reopening timeline. Eileen Ang, NTD News, California.
So as the travel and tourism industry claws its way out of the pandemic, a New York hotel is pulling out all the stops when it comes to amenities. You can now roller skate on the weekends at the TWA Hotel at John F. Kennedy Airport, and on the tarmac no less. Skaters can take a spin around a 1958 Lockheed airplane. It costs just $20 for adults and $16 for children. Tickets are sold on a first-come, first-served basis, and the rink is cleaned after every 50-minute skating session. Skates, they're also disinfected after every use. And Croatia has opened its stunning Adriatic coastline to tourists after a year of pandemic lockdowns, restrictions. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
The mood is relaxed in Ravine, and masks are scarce on this part of the Istrian Peninsula. It's part of the northernmost part of the Croatian coast, and is famous for spectacular beaches and thick pine forests. Hotels and restaurants were preparing for the start of the main tourist season in June. Croatia was one of the first European countries to drop most of its pandemic travel restrictions.
Well, it will be definitely a challenging year in front of us, mostly because of the pandemic situation. So as Croatia heavily depends on tourism.
New infections are dropping, and officials there predict that about 50% of the nation's 4 million people will be fully vaccinated by midsummer. But the tourist season's success will depend highly on the regulations and quarantine protocols in tourists' home countries.
The tourism sector has started with vaccination. All the employees of the hotels, restaurants, also private accommodation are getting vaccinated so they can be safe for the tourists.
The European Union is in the process of launching COVID-19 certificates. Officials said the system should be up and running by July 1st. That means European Union citizens can make summer vacation plans within the bloc's 27 nations without having to worry about quarantines. The European Commission said the certificates will be issued in digital form and are designed to be shown on smartphones. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
That's the latest business updates for today. But you can still catch NTD Evening News with Stephanie Cox. Starts at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. For NTD Business, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.